The state of my room is definitely because I've been raging at video games and not because I've been too lazy to clean up after the long work week that I've had. Fucking Barbie Horse Adventures! So let's talk about Souls-likes. So Souls-likes are one of those game genres that at first I really didn't get the point of. I mean, to be completely honest with you, I didn't like them. I thought they were stupid. I played a little bit of each of the first 3 Dark Souls games, and they will be covered in depth on the channel here eventually. But I remember distinctly just really not getting the appeal of smashing your head against a brick wall over and over again in hopes that the brick wall was going to break eventually. But then I discovered Neo, and then after that, I discovered Bloodborne, and I really enjoyed those two. They were really, really good games, really fun and really interesting. And over time, I started playing more and more Souls-like games and recognizing that a good big portion of Souls-like is being able to understand the game. As long as there is not too much information thrown at you at one time and the combat is simplistic while being hard to master, then Souls-likes can be incredibly fun. And way too many companies don't know how to fucking do that. Hi, my name is Kaiser, and I make video game reviews, rants, and opinions, and if that's something that's interests you, then please make sure you hit that subscribe button so that I can get to 5,000 by the end of the year. And today, we're going to be doing my very first episode of what I like to call quick reviews. Quick reviews are just little reviews that I don't write a script for. I just make some bullet points on the screen and talk to you for a little bit about a game that I've recently played, either because the game is too short, like Don't Scream, or because, I hated the fucking game. I hate Code Vein. Fuck Code Vein. So I want to get like my one positive out of the way. The character creator is one of the funniest character creators I've ever seen in my entire life. It is hilarious. I think it's good. The music is also good, but that's where my my positivity stops. So Code Vein is basically anime waifu Dark Souls, and it's really, really bad. The very first thing I want to talk about is probably the writing. So the voice acting in the game sounds very awkward and off-putting, but I don't necessarily think it's the voice actor's fault. It has a lot to do with how bad the dialogue is. There was this one part where this character laughs, and the way he laughs, I made fun of it for like the next 10 minutes. Because it was just like, it wasn't a normal laugh. He was like, ha ha, ha
Ha! We really hit the jackpot.
ha, ha. There's other just like really badly written, dialogue in there, it's like it's like when they gave the dialogue to the voice actors were like, well, you obviously don't care about the story, so why the fuck would we? The voice acting is very disconnected, very uninspired, and again, I blame that on the dialogue being some of the most generic written shit of all time. You know, everything's about blood in Code Vein. So you have blood beads, and you have blood veins, and you have blood springs. And I'm not saying that they need to come up with like some fancy, like I hate it when games and stories do that, when they come up with like some outside name that's like foreign or whatever. Like they just, oh, this isn't blood. This is life essensara. We need more life essensara, you know what I mean? So like, I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing, but like the way that they present everything, it feels like the entire game was written by a 14-year-old. And then when you meet the first woman in the game who's got massive fucking honkers, it really continues to feel like the game was written by a 14-year-old. But that's not what made me put the game down. What made me put the game down is that the gameplay is fucking atrocious. So here is how you design a good Souls-like combat system. You give your character a attack, a light attack, a heavy attack. You give them a guard, and then you give them a parry. And that parry is normally tied to the guard, but it can be tied to other things. Like in Bloodborne, it's tied to your sidearm, okay? Your parry needs to be consistent, and it needs to be understandable. If it is not, then we're not going to have fun. And when you start throwing extra shit into your combat system, you need to make sure that that extra shit flows naturally into combat. So, for example, Code Vein has this thing called Ichor or Ichor or whatever. And that is basically your ammunition, not your stamina, your mana, I guess you could say. That's the best way to put it. It's your mana. If you shoot the bayonet weapon, it drains Ichor. If you use any of the gifts, which are basically like these special moves or whatever, it drains Ichor. But in order to get some of that Ichor back, you have two options. You can either melee the enemy, which if you're using a lot of Ichor, you're most likely not going to be in melee range because you're either playing a ranged class or you're playing the spellcaster, which those two use up a lot of Ichor traditionally. So instead they want you to do the drain move. Now the drain move is not something that flows naturally in the combat. What you do is you hold down the X button and these two Hydra head things come out of your back. And then whenever you let go, the attack that it does gives you an Ichor point back. And that move single-handedly makes me want to break something. Because you can't, like, in something like Souls-like combat, everything, like I said, everything has to flow from one to the next. Let's take Elden Ring, for example. Whenever you're playing Elden Ring, your spells, your summoning, and your attacks all connect from one to the other in a way that makes the combat feel fluid and intuitive. Even if I don't like Elden Ring for various other reasons, the point is that the combat is at least well done. And in Code Vein, everything from the combat to the walking to interacting, everything feels disconnected. Not just from each other, but from you as the player. And I told myself, because one of my community members came in and were talking about how much they love Code Vein. A couple of them actually, while we were streaming it, were telling me how much they absolutely love the game. And I wanted to give it a chance because they love the game. And but we gave it 3 hours. And in 3 hours, I fucking hated that game. I told myself I wanted to give it 6 hours. But we got past the first dungeon and we got past the first boss. And then we go to the first area of the story. And the part that made me quit, and this is something for just like all Souls-like developers out there, I need you guys to understand, if you're going to develop a Souls-like game, then you need to make sure that you stop throwing hordes of enemies at us. Because Souls-like combat has only ever been designed for 1-on-1 or 1-on-2, at max 1-on-3. Having to fight off fucking 30 goddamn enemies in an area is stupid. Especially back-to-back, especially when you can't see them coming, and especially when the fodder of them, because that's what they are, they're fodder enemies. They should not be able to stun lock you into oblivion and take off all of your health before you can react. Now, something interesting that I want to talk about is the fact that Code Vein gives you a partner. You get an AI partner, and that partner is pretty helpful, but they generally don't draw aggro. And this is another thing that's kind of frustrating, is that the enemies will always attack you and only you. Even when I picked what I assumed was like a more tanky partner, he would hit hard and he would kill things very fast, but he wouldn't draw enough aggro. And that brings me back to the range stuff. I was talking about range attack earlier. What really fucking pisses me off, especially in games like this, is whenever the developers give you a ranged option, like the Ranger or the Caster or the, I forget what the last one was called. I think it was like I don't know. I got it late into my playthrough, but whenever they give you a ranged option and then being a ranged fighter is not viable, that shit pisses me off. Don't give me a ranged option, right? Like, again, let's go back to Bloodborne, a really good Souls-like. They give you a gun, but they do not at any point convince you that that gun is for you to sit in the back and take pot shots. That's not the gun's job. The gun's job is to provide a parry. So that's what you use it for. They don't fool you into thinking that you can viably be a ranged person. But Code Vein tries that shit, and I hate it. Overall, as I was playing through Code Vein, everything felt, like I said, disconnected and uncontrolled. If you would go to do an action, it wasn't that there was a delay. Like, it's so hard to describe controls. Like, I'll put it this way, right? In most games, you can combine your light attacks with your heavy attacks for a min-maxing of damage. In Code Vein, when you try that, there's this pause. So you go, let's say you went square, square, triangle, right? You go boom, boom, and then you do the heavy attack. And that right there feels so bad to use. I talked about the draining thing. Trying to incorporate your gift attacks also doesn't really work very well. Oh, the camera. I forgot to write that down. The camera is so dog shit. So, like most games that have been released in the last 20 years, there's a lock-on feature so that you can keep an eye on the enemy you're currently fighting. And the lock-on will randomly disappear. It'll just randomly fucking vanish into thin air. And it's so bad. It's one of those like it's one of those things where you just like you'll be locked on and you'll be fighting and you'll dodge roll away and all of a sudden it's not locked on anymore. Or there might be, I'm gonna say this, there might be a feature for this, but I just didn't I didn't turn it on because I didn't know what it did when I first saw it. But whenever you kill someone, it doesn't automatically lock onto someone else. And so there's this weird flow of the fight where you'll lock onto something, kill it, and then you'll desperately click your right stick to try to lock onto something else, and you just start getting smacked all around, and it's not fun. The lock-on feature also will sometimes not lock on to the things that you're looking at. Like shit that's right in front of you, and it'll lock onto something in the back, or lock onto something off to the side of your screen. Like you're staring directly at the enemy you want to fight, and it just locks onto some rando in the left corner. And it's so annoying. It's just like there's so many minor frustrations with Code Vein that could be solved by being a competent Souls-like, and it's just not. It's just not a competent Souls-like. And I'm already extremely picky about my Souls-likes. So coming back to try to play this and just playing this game that feels, it's like you're a puppet master, right? It's not like you're controlling your character. It's like you're controlling the strings to your character. You know, that's the best way to put that. You're not controlling the game. You're controlling a voice within the game. There's no weight behind the things you do. And so every hit, every spell, every dodge roll feels like you're far away spectating it happen as opposed to feeling like you're doing it. That's like the best way that I can put it. But yeah, I had to put down Code Vein. I kind of wanted it to be my next deep review that I did like Jak and Daxter, but it just wasn't going to happen. I gave up on it. But hey, if you want to see me struggle with it, you want to see my thoughts in real time, then go over to my main gameplay channel and check out the unedited VOD. You know, go check that out if you want to do that. Links in the description. It'll be linked at the end of the video as well. But before I get out of here, as always, we do want to give a special shout out to our channel members, the Gamer Geek, Damari D. Cordova, Peter RJ, Cinegrim, Spirit Upgrades, The Cannibal Main, and Nuclear Bomb for their additional support. If you guys want to find out how to see videos early, as well as get special thank yous and everything like that, then please make sure you click that join button down below. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one.